Speaker, and it's great to see you in the chair, and congratulations, thank you. And I rise today to also contribute to the Building and Planning Legislation Amendment Bill 2022. And firstly, I'd like to thank the Minister for Planning and her staff for the introduction of these very important reforms to this House to update and improve the clarity, operation and efficiency of our vital building and planning systems. Look, we continue to deliver and improve upon the government's 2018 election commitments, strengthening protections and recommitting to our green spaces around the city. Planning made a significant contribution to the Victorian economy in 2022, with $3.6 billion worth of projects recommended through the Development Facilitation Program, which streamlines the assessment and determination of projects that inject investment into the Victorian economy and keep people in jobs. Approvals of over 1,000 homes as part of the Big Housing Build program, $90 billion worth of big build project approvals and $5.6 billion in construction activity approvals, and of course powered nearly 1 million additional homes through our renewable energy permits. By amending the Building Act 1993, the Architects Act 1991 and the Surveying Act 2004 and the Planning and Environment Act 1987, we are creating the following reforms. We're strengthening the legislative protection of Melbourne's green wedges. We're streamlining the endorsement processes for a distinctive area and landscape. We're supporting the implementation of automatic mutual recognition in Victoria, and we clarify the power to issue restricted plumbing work licences for private plumbing work. We remain committed to improving the efficiency and clarity and operation of the building and planning systems. And I've got one beef with building and planning, and it's actually with developers. And I'm sure we've all experienced it in our own electorates, and that is where developers are selling land off, promising the world to the buyers of the land, promising infrastructure builds that they never will commit to, and they don't have to commit to because they're either state or federal infrastructure builds. So they promise these things, they sell the land off, people buy into these developments. 5 years, 10 years later, they still haven't got that infrastructure that they've been promised by these developers. And I think it's about time that local councils and ourselves start to go harder on these developers, that when they sell this land off, that they need to stick to those commitments that they're promising. You can't promise a railway station, you can't promise overpasses on the freeways. You can't do those sort of infrastructure builds without consultation with other government levels of government. And developers have been getting away with it for years, and it's a damn disgrace, and it's leaving people in places where they thought they were buying into a great community and a great development and having all that infrastructure, and they don't. So it's not good enough as far as I'm concerned. I also want to take the opportunity to talk about the immense pride that the Melton residents have in their green and open spaces that surrounds our electorate. Melton's a very open space, and as a kid growing up in the western suburbs, you could almost see Melton from Braybrook. Now you can't. All you see is rooftops. But we still have a lot of space, open space and green space around that Melton electorate. Melbourne's 12 green wedges cover the areas that sit just outside Melbourne's urban growth boundary and provide an essential break between the intensive urban development along the growth corridors. And it's one of the major reasons that people are moving into my electorate. As a city fringe locality, I think it's 30 to 31 kilometres from the city centre, we're incredibly lucky to have deliberately considered protection of these green wedge spaces, and which varies in environmental diversity, even just among the three that Melton sits across and is surrounded by: the Western Plains South Green Wedge and Western Plains North Green Wedge, and further north the Sunbury Green Wedge. And we are enshrining protections for Melton and Melbourne's cherished green wedge in legislation, which of course is welcome news for many, including the friends of groups across the state and in particular in my electorate. Green wedges contain a mix of agriculture and low-density activities, like the major infrastructure that supports urban areas, which includes the Melbourne and Moorabbin airports, the Eastern Water Treatment Facilities, and the Western Water Treatment Facility down in Werribee, where my good friend, the member for Werribee, represents. It is home to major quarries used in building industries, and roughly 1/3 of the total green wedge area is public land, including national parks, other parks, and reserves. And Melton has open basalt plains, cultural heritage sites, vital water catchments and biodiversity conservation sites like our stunning Victorian volcanic plains. The Victorian volcanic plains is Victoria's only biodiversity hotspot and is one of only 15 in Australia, making it an area of national and global biological significance, and it supports many species of native plants and animals that are protected under Commonwealth and our state laws. Over 150 years of agriculture, grazing and urban development has radically transformed the Melton landscape, and as little as 1% of the former extensive grasslands and grassy woodlands of the VPP survive. So these features of our green wedges contribute immensely to making Melton such a dynamic and enticing place to live and to work. And the contribution that green wedge land makes to our economy is substantial. And the land is critical to our economy and Melbourne's food production, contributing around $5.79 billion in economic activity and supporting roughly 16,500 jobs across a range of industry sectors. And we are home to some of the world's best wine destinations, parks and wetlands. And as the population grows in Melbourne, our green wedges ensure that the character and landscape of communities along the urban growth boundary are going to be protected. And we are protecting Melbourne's green wedge against inappropriate development. So by passing this legislation, we are committing to protecting Melbourne's green wedges for current and future generations. And the bill details the government's objectives for green wedge land and also creates a requirement for a preparation and review of green wedge management by the local councils. It also gives the ability for the Minister for Planning to issue instruction as to what the council management plans need to include, and that provides structure, guidance, form and consistency across the board. The process as it exists is difficult, and for a document as important as a statement, a strategic plan will guide the future use and development of the land in the declared area for the next 50 years. And it's important that we make it easier and quicker for endorsement and declaration. And streamlining the endorsement process removes the barriers to finalising the SPP. Victoria is home to such a large number of unique and sensitive landscapes and distinctive places that are highly valued for their environmental, social, cultural and economic assets. And we know these areas are vital to the functioning of our urban areas, providing people with clean air, drinking water, food, resources and recreational opportunities. These areas are under increasing pressure for development because of their attractiveness, accessibility and proximity to our cities, and because of environmental factors like the impacts of climate change. I will quickly go to the automatic mutual recognition, and the Commonwealth's Mutual Recognition Act 1992 was amended in 2021 to introduce an automatic mutual recognition scheme to be adopted by all states and territories, and it makes it easier for hard-working registered licensed workers to work across state and territory borders, qualified and licensed in Victoria. A driver's licence type model for occupational licensing will be adopted as part of the automatic mutual recognition scheme and is intended to enable a person to use the occupational licence issued by their home state to carry out the same activities it authorises in other participating Australian jurisdictions. This brings Victoria into line with the rest of the country, and in the case of Queensland, well ahead. This is an important bill, as I said before, my only disappointment with building and planning in this state is to allow developers to get away with the promises that they put forward and never deliver on in regard to infrastructure build, and I think that shouldn't be allowed, and I think we need to put more pressure on the developers in regard to what they offer and what they end up delivering, and I think local councils need to hold them to account and we need to hold them to account. This is an important bill, an amendment, and I do commend the bill to the House.